guess the last thing that I wanted to ask you about, I don't want to go deep into this because I think it's already been covered very well elsewhere. I think that, for example, if people watch the interview you did with Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi on Useful Idiots, it's very well covered there. It's a very deep dive into this, and it's I think any question you might have about this, right, is answered there, right? But but I'm sure that there's somebody who's watching or listening to this, who has heard, about the accusations that were made against you. And of course, unfortunately, the way these things often work is that the original accusation is very splashy. It gets a lot of attention. And the later debunking of the accusation is very quiet, right? Not a lot of people, like many fewer people are aware of the later refutation than of the initial accusation itself. So I think at this point that stuff has been fairly thoroughly refuted. I have. Again, I point people to that Useful Idiots interview or the one you do with Sam Cedar on the Majority Report for, a shorter version of it. But I think one thing that really disappointed me in all this, is as a member of, as a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America, I was very disappointed to see DSA, abandoning you, without hearing all of the facts. And I think that between what happened to you and what happened to Alex Morse, who was accused, well, there were some extremely vague accusations against Morse, which is actually something the cases have in common. And a lot of people who I think maybe should have known better took it seriously, right? That it was obviously his supporters of his opponent, who in that case, were the main people pushing this stuff. But lots of people on the left, just assumed right in their initial reactions that where there's smoke there must be fire, right? That if there's an accusation there must be guilt. And I guess my question for you about this would be, how can we as a movement get smarter about this stuff? Because it seems to me that if we just conflate accusation with guilt every time we run a candidate who endangers, an establishment figure, we're always going to be vulnerable to this, right? Like if what we're saying is we're always going to believe anything that anybody says about this, no matter what, and not seriously look into it, then why wouldn't our political opponents just constantly use that against us? So I guess I was just wondering in the last minutes we have together, if you could reflect a little bit on that situation and on what we might learn from these incidents.
Thank you for raising it. I do take the issues at stake in the accusations towards me very seriously, while I do know that the accusations were all false. The Intercept actually just yesterday published a more extensive, effective correction of the hit piece that they published in July. And it exposes a great many things, including any number of places where the interests of my critics reveal themselves. And, it's presented in the press as women and workers, speaking out against a bad boss and all kinds of other things. They constructed half a dozen different smears against me. They claimed falsely that I had a pattern of inappropriate behavior with volunteers. I have there's no pattern, there's no incident, nothing beyond rumors that they themselves constructed. They claimed that I'd harassed someone that they then found, who then opened the door for them to bring their concerns about my campaign strategy into the press. That was ultimately refuted. I mean, this is somebody who's accused me of things, all kinds of things for years, accused other people of all kinds of things for years, someone who themselves has plenty of, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to punch back at my accusers. Just it amazed me that anybody, frankly, based on the facts, leapt to such judgments. And as the person falsely accused, particularly a person of color, it's really hard for me to look at this through any other lens than the racial prejudgment. Like, there's nothing else to explain it. Why, for instance, every local press outlet would publish uncorroborated stories where the only people they'd cite were working together. Like, there was no independent validation or verification. There's no fact checking. Just publish the thing, hope it's true. And then when the evidence emerged, within days, 2 months ago. And it took yesterday as the first time a press outlet, aside from the Humanist Report, covered these texts. And even still, The Intercept, misrepresents them. The texts show my former colleagues, a white man in particular, reaching out to my volunteers, a white woman in particular, encouraging her to say that I had done something inappropriate when she, in the text, is very explicit that no such thing happened. And she's quite explicit. She says, I'm not going to jump on your smear campaign bandwagon. She says, I'm disgusted by the slandering that's happening here. She says, now you know the truth, you have to tell everyone else. And what my colleagues did was go to the press and claim this series of lies. And, in terms of how we can insulate ourselves against this problem as a society, I'd say the first thing we have to do is recognize the difference between punching up and punching down. The Me Too movement, in my case, was used as a sword and a shield by my accusers. A sword to, presumptively cast guilt, and a shield to avoid and evade any questions about their own credibility. And the Me Too movement gained prominence by punching up. Powerful, wealthy, particularly white men were brought down who had long been predators. Attacking, anytime we construct lies about people, we can abandon any pretense of punching up. And when we're particularly punching down at an immigrant challenging the leading corporate Democrat in the House, and my former colleagues came from the political establishment here in San Francisco. So this was the establishment arraying itself to protect itself. And my critics have been rewarded by the local establishment, or in some cases the national establishment, for participating in this campaign, this effort. We should look at the difference between punching up and punching down. And I think we also should be committed to process. Due process is a constitutional norm in the criminal justice system for a reason. Frankly, because the state, when it accuses people, often gets it wrong. Similarly,
there's this standard that accusation, is the same as guilt, or they probably wouldn't be accused if they hadn't done something, right? Is something that we're normally used to hearing for apologists for aggressive policing and mass incarceration. And frankly, right, you were fighting for civil liberties in the Bush era, that a lot of that fight was about the importance of due process, of the rights of defendants, not conflating accusation with guilt. And so it seems like we really need to find a way to internalize that norm, or some version of it, right? I know it's a very different context than a court of law, but there has to be some version of a norm for performing some kind of investigation.
At least enough to just hear witnesses and evidence. It doesn't have to be so complicated. DSASF, I was so deeply disappointed in that network because it did. And, I can't just blame it on white people. This was racism effectuated by, a diverse set of actors. And the idea of leaping to conclusions without considering evidence and affirmatively denying opportunities to review it and invite witnesses to speak, to make decisions based on what your friends say instead of the facts, is frankly how every incident of racial terror across the South happened. And I'm grateful that it wasn't as bad for me. I'm still standing. I'm still here to talk about it. But what happened to my campaign here with DSA's active participation, I'll just quote one of my supporters. She's an Afro-Latina grandmother, a Navy veteran. Her name's Gloria Berry. She's been very outspoken about what's gone on here, and she's been entirely silenced by the local press. The Intercept finally quoted her yesterday. She publicly posted after one of the DSA meetings that she felt like she just left a KKK rally. And it breaks my heart how well the shoe fit. The hateful things that people said. One of my accusers said, quote, "Brown men rape," was the quote in a DSA meeting about a proposal to rescind their endorsement about me. They wrote the proposal knowing it was false. And then we have this conversation, and then it's in the press, and, it's just such an act of unethical irresponsibility. And I might have been the target. But at the end of the day, the victim is the movement. And all I can do is advocate for the policies that we need as effectively as I can, hope that my city is sophisticated enough to recognize the choices between us, before us, and to choose the intelligent option that will preserve an opportunity for the future, and hope that people dissuaded or distracted by these accusations care more about the facts or the future than they do about virtue signaling. And to
Yeah.
the extent that's true, I'm looking forward to representing San Francisco in the next session of Congress.
Well, absolutely. I really hope that you do. You have you have all of my support. I would really urge anybody in your district who's watching or listening to this to vote for you, to volunteer, donate in the final stretch. This is extraordinarily important, and even obviously you're very much an underdog here, but not only would it obviously be a beautiful thing to replace Nancy Pelosi with a principled democratic socialist, but just think about what it says if somebody like Pelosi can act the way that she has in, just focus on the last few years, never mind her whole history before then, continuing, as you say, to write these checks to the Trump administration to do everything that it does. And if the people who should be the base for an opposition to that, right, aren't voting for an alternative, when presented with the chance because of California's electoral system, right, that really sends a message that we're fine with that. And so I hope that that's not sent. I hope that, well, obviously what I'd most hope for is that you win, but even if that doesn't happen, I hope that there is a big enough share of the vote to send like a really serious message of dissatisfaction. Shahid, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Glad to be with you. Thanks for having me on, Ben.